Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So Bernie Sanders responds to Hillary Clinton. It's just in case you were under a rock somewhere and you just hadn't come across this bit of information. Hillary Clinton is releasing a book. The book is named What Happened? At least that's my image in my head of what she does when she says, what happened? How did I lose to reality show hosts? Now, I know it's not supposed to be a question, but I'm assuming that if there was any fairness to the world, if there was any reality to the world, it would be a question. What happened? But that's not what we get. It's Hillary Clinton's revisionist history of what took place in the last presidential election. What happened? How did I lose to reality show hosts? How did I get beat by reality show hosts? It was supposed to be a lock. Didn't that reality show host know that I was inevitable? Well, because I was inevitable, since I was inevitable, I couldn't have lost on my own merits. It had to have been something else. What happened is Hillary Clinton's, like I said, revisionist history, giving what she believes or what she wants people to believe actually took place. One of the pages of the book was leaked or released. That particular page attacked Bernie Sanders, essentially saying Bernie Sanders created lasting damage, that when she finally got into the general election, it was too much. She was overcame by the wounds that she took in the primary. Bernie Sanders responded to this. I don't remember her quote, but whatever it was some demeaning quote that she made, blaming Bernie Sanders, saying something to the effect of unworkable plans and this fairy tale, stuff like that. Bernie Sanders' response rubs me the wrong way. It rubs me the wrong way for a very specific reason. I'm having a flashback and I don't like the flashback. So, of course, loving drama, they don't necessarily like to cover real news, but they enjoy covering drama. CNN sticks a camera in Bernie Sanders' face. And they asked him a question. They put the question to him. Do you have a response for Hillary Clinton because of what she said in her book? This is Sanders' response. My response is that right now it's appropriate to look forward and not backwards, he said in a statement. I'm working overtime to now see we overturn President Donald Trump's decision on DACA, pass a $15 minimum wage, and next week I'll be offering a Medicare for all single-payer system. Our job is to go forward, he added. Here's the catch. There's a few problems with the statement, but yeah, and I'm not trying to be petty. I'm just saying there's a few problems with the statement. The first part is the DACA program. Trump was going to be taken to court regardless. If Bernie Sanders really cared, like if this, he had home in him. I don't remember having this conversation when Obama was deporting all those other Hispanics. I don't remember that at all. Obama broke the record in deporting people. And the second point, if Democrats, and I'm including Bernie Sanders in this, he acts as a company man. If Democrats honestly believe that those kids who were in this country should have stayed in this country, meaning they were brought here, no fault of their own, they grew up here, and they often have no tether at all to the places that they may be deported to. If they earnestly believe that these were awesome fucking kids and they really cared something about, and they weren't just used for political football, then Obama could have given them a pardon. He had the presidential authority for the entire 8 years he was in office. He refused to use it. You can hit Donald Trump for this, fair enough, but ultimately, Donald Trump is being taken to court, and Donald Trump is 6 months, giving Congress 6 months to do something. I'm just making a point that the reason why we're in this situation now has to do with Congress and the prior president. That's all I'm saying. As for the Medicare for All thing, we should have universal health care in America. The Affordable Care Act should have been universal health care in America. We don't have universal health care. Fair enough. We didn't get it under supposedly a progressive Democratic president, a Democratic Congress, and a Democratic Senate, Democratic House. Fortunately, Bernie Sanders is offering up his Medicare for All plan. And that's certainly going to pass a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and signed by a Republican president. That's certainly going to take place. Guess who signed on to that bill? Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has signed on to the bill. I've read it the other day. Kamala Harris has signed on to the Medicare for All bill. So is Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren, it makes more sense. Kamala Harris, whatever. My only point with this is, it's not going to go anywhere. I understand why Sanders is doing it, and I'm way on a tangent on this. But Sanders is doing this because he wants to pin Democrats down, essentially saying, look, you signed on to this when there was no chance for this thing to go anywhere. And when you get into power again, if you get into power again, you signed your name onto this. Are you going to repudiate your name? Are you going to say you're for this when you didn't have any power, but you're going to, you know, or are you going to toe the line once you get power? I think that's the way he's going with it. But if we're being honest, it's not going anywhere. It's like, I understand you're putting it out there, and I understand you have your own machinations. Meaning, yes, I'm putting this out there. Yes, I'm trying to get Democrats to sign on to it. Yes, if I run again, and if I win, I'm going to have their signatures signed on to this particular bill. I think that's where he's going with it. But the reality is, this bill isn't going to go anywhere. It's dead on arrival. My issue with this statement, and yes, I know I've said a few issues, but my very specific issue with this statement, we're looking forward. We're not looking backwards. I'm working overtime to now overturn Trump's decision, blah, blah, blah. My response is that right now it's appropriate to look forward and not backwards. The last person who told me, looked in the camera and told me to look forward, not backwards, was Barack Obama. And Barack Obama, President Obama, was saying this in response to people asking him questions about the torture program, about this idea of prosecuting Bush. The prior president invaded a country and killed 1 million people. When we say the word 1 million, it's hard to really get across what that means. Meaning the death and destruction wrought on one family after the next by people from this country to that country based on the decision of an idiotic president. George Bush. In addition to invading another country that did nothing to us, he also started a torture program. In that torture program, George Bush was trying to get people to essentially create a link between Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. Or between Iraq and 9/11. That link didn't exist. Is torture against the law? Does the constitutional lawyer who took the presidency after George Bush know that torture is against United States law? Is it against the law for a president to invade another country based on the premise of a lie and kill 1 million people? Is there no penalty for anything? Telling me to look forward and not backwards. That same president turned around and operated a drone program that murdered thousands of innocent civilians, mowed them down. None of these people said anything about it. None of these people complained about it, meaning Democrats and Democrat functionaries. You could even find Democrats on TV explaining why Obama had to murder innocent civilians abroad. This statement, I'm looking forward and not backward, is problematic for me. It's problematic for me because not punishing the consequences or not punishing things that took place allows those things to happen again with impunity. Meaning it sets the standard for something to just be. It's almost like a general law of sorts, a general allowance. Well, that guy did it, so now I have the ability to do the same thing. I'm saying, if a president invades a country and murders 1 million people, and if that president opens a drone program, that president should be impeached. If not necessarily impeached, he should at least be prosecuted. He should be prosecuted. Is murder against the law? Is torture against the law? If the president that was in office did those things, had no justification to do those things. Lied, by the way, in the process of doing those things. Shouldn't that president be prosecuted? And for the president who's coming in office is telling me, hey, we should look forward, not backwards. And he turns around and starts doing some of the same things that the prior president is doing. Well, it wasn't prosecuted. Because it wasn't prosecuted, clearly, it's okay. It's appropriate to say that what took place in the primaries is not necessarily the same thing as killing 1 million people. It is the same thing as killing any notion of a representative government, though. You had a primary contest in which one of the candidates was cheated, outright cheated. The information was presented to the American public saying that the other people cheated. And that guy is now telling me that we should look forward and not backwards. Don't look at the things that took place in the past. Pay attention to the things that I'm trying to get done that aren't going to get done in either party at this point. I may believe that Democrats may push for single payer. That's more so because of the embarrassment of Obamacare failing outright in the open. This other stuff I'm immensely skeptical of. My problem with this statement is, if you allow a party to cheat one of the candidates in any election, what's to stop them from doing it again the next time? Beyond that, there's something gross about one of the parties cheating one of the candidates and that candidate turning around telling people you should look forward and not backwards. Don't look at the fact that these guys cheated me. Look forward and not backwards. Do you understand that any government, the transfer of power, meaning one government handed over to another, like a representative, will be a Republican, Democrat, whatever, just changeover of power. That changeover of power is a way for the public itself to assert its will on the political process. The public is in a mood for X, and ideally the public will have a candidate who's responsive to that mood for X. Meaning if the planet or the population is in somewhat of a populist mood, and they try to put in one guy, and you cheat me with somebody else who's not that way. What I'm getting at is this typical transfer of power is essentially one government being toppled and another government coming in. Typically in America, it's a peaceful transition of power. One guy, you know, they may be antagonistic in other situations, but under normal circumstances, in that particular moment, there's a courtesy between those two parties. What happens, however, when that process of transferring power over in this peaceful way gets subverted, where one of the parties themselves makes the determination that they themselves can choose who runs, and goes about cheating the other candidate that they themselves don't like. Essentially, we have the establishment pick and we have the pick of the rest of the population. And we don't want the rest of the population to get a choice in this, so we're going to do what we need to do to put in our establishment pick. She lost. Part and parcel to the reason she lost was because she cheated you. Saying we should look forward and not backwards pretends as if that didn't take place. And I think that's a failure. I don't necessarily want to repeat the actions of the past in the same way that the presidencies have repeated the same actions of the past. Meaning Bush goes in, murders 1 million people, installs a drone program. The next president, thinking it's perfectly okay to murder innocent civilians, expands those wars into 8 wars and continues to murder civilians in those 8 countries. The next president comes in, rips the small band-aids of any idea of civilians, casualties, rips it off, goes so far as to try to obfuscate those murders from view by putting some of the drone program back into the CIA. Each president is essentially an extension of the last presidency. By not prosecuting those things in the next presidency, you've allowed those things to essentially proliferate. Of course you were going to get a Republican president at some point. And yes, he was going to use the powers that you yourself have accrued in that office. Bush should have been prosecuted. Prosecuting Bush prevents you from a Donald Trump. Or at the very least, it prevents you from some of the vagaries of Donald Trump. Because at the very least, he would know that he could be put in prison for the things he'd do in that office. The only lesson you've given Donald Trump is that the president is above the law and can do whatever the hell he wants. I'm not in the mood to look forward and that backwards. I think it's a bad strategy in general. I think you learn from history. And the thing that I've learned is that the Democratic Party is perfectly willing to cheat in order to put who they want in that office. Being a sheepdog and saying, hey, pretend as if they didn't cheat me. That doesn't sit well with me. That doesn't sit well with me at all. Look, the question is, if there is no penalty for cheating, what's to stop them from doing it again? Meaning, why do you believe that the candidate who you want could exceed the primaries in the Democratic Party if they were willing to cheat the last guy? And that the last guy that was cheated comes out and doesn't call out the cheating, but instead pulls an Obama and says, I want to look forward and not backwards. Nobody is saying he needs to be vicious towards Hillary Clinton, nothing like that. But at the very least, he should have called out the fact that they were cheating. Looking forward and not backwards doesn't help. I'm sorry, that doesn't help. Alright, let me know what you think. Do you feel like you're in the mood to look forward and not backwards? And do you honestly believe that looking forward and not backwards and pretending as if what took place in the primaries never took place is in any way going to prevent that from happening again? Exposing it, calling it out. And look, in the case of Bush, putting him in prison would have made a hell of a statement to the rest of the world, but also to the American public, that there are some things that the president is not allowed to do. Murder is murder. In this case, same thing with the elections. There should be some things that parties aren't allowed to do. I would have wished the case that Jerry Beck would have been successful. But to pretend it didn't happen, that burns. That burns. Bernie Sanders was given $220 million. And we find out that the money was given for the most part in vain. It was given in vain because the Democrats had already chosen who they wanted in that primary. The idea that you're going to take $220 million, not going to call out the cheating, and instead you're going to say, hey, I'm trying to look forward. I don't want to look back in the past. That's great for you, dude. That's not great for a lot of people. Me being one of them. I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the work through Patreon. Thanks guys.